Life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail. Hey, everybody, welcome, welcome. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. We have a really important show today. It's really important. When I thought about this and introducing all of you to Trish Laub, I thought about, what it is that had touched her on the shoulder and had called her to come forward with a passion and purpose in life that is so important given the day and age we live in now. Now, we didn't know that at the time, but it has now become one of the most important things we look at. And today we're going to talk about a most meaningful life with Trish Laub. But what that journey is like is going to take us through the realm of scenarios that one enters in life when they are either asked to be a caregiver. We're going to talk about the meaning of that and what Trish calls it, or you are on the other side of that, the receiver. Today I get to introduce all of you to somebody that has created an amazing platform, someone that has said yes to touching upon one of the most important aspects of our journey. And we've talked about this from years back. We talked about the fact that we would be coming into a time where we look at comfort in their journey, and that's her. It's an award-winning book series. We're talking about that as well. But what we are really talking about is how one steps forward and looks at this aspect of caregiving in a totally different way. Looking at it from every aspect of who you are and the scenario that you have in your life in front of you now that you didn't expect. And we're going to talk about the range because here's what we know about this journey. Every single one of us gets to start this journey at a very young age. You just don't know it. Today, I want to introduce you to my friend, my colleague, and the host of a fabulous hit show, somebody that understands caregiving is the acknowledgement of the care hero. Trish, it's great to have you.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
I want to start with what I said about the idea of, look, we start this journey really early on, but we don't know it. And I want to just take people on a journey in your life. This is something that I know. Each of us has challenges and obstacles. I would love to know for you what some of the challenges and obstacles you had to go through shaped you, molded you, had you stand tall in your power to bring you to this moment.
Okay. Let me just start with the caregiving journey. We can get to the other term. But I so agree with you. That journey starts for us before we even recognize that it's part of our journey. And I have so many examples now that I can stand where I am and look back and say, oh my gosh, I was a caregiver. I was a care hero. And simple things like stopping on the side of the road for an accident or helping, oh gosh, my mom years and years and years ago cut her hands. And even as a little 6-year-old, I had to do my part to help the household still run and take care of my mom with my sisters after she was injured. There's so many things like that along the actual care process that I now look back on. My grandparents lived with my parents, and I didn't have to, I chose to provide care for them when my parents were traveling or unable. So it was not a conscious process. It's almost, for me, it's almost, it's just kind of a primal thing. Somebody needs help and I want to help them. But then on the flip side of that, I look back to the path that I've kind of taken with my formal education in systems analysis and design and designing systems, looking at processes, figuring out how to make them run smoothly, to a variety of the self-employed jobs I've had. unexpectedly in 2005, I ended up writing 2 books of a 3-book series on raising triple threat kids who can sing, dance, and act. Didn't see that coming, but that came in very useful when I wrote books. So for me, it's just, I can really stand where I am today and look back and go, wow, everything led to here.
Yeah. And and that's why I started with talking about early on, we are prepared for the entire journey of life. We just
Mm-hmm.
don't know we're prepared. And sometimes we don't know how prepared we are going to need to be. And isn't that where your body of work now comes in, or steps in, as I should say? Because we may be prepared to put the band aid on the brother. Oh, like Anthony cut himself on a tree, band-aid, and you're given a little toolkit, and you throw this on, you clean it with this, and then you just slap the band-aid on it.
Right.
So we get that. What we don't get, maybe, training to care for somebody
Mm-hmm.
that has a critical condition, maybe a condition that slowly deteriorates over time. I have a friend that has MS, and so those journeys are different. Um, how was that journey for you? Because you're right, we learned to put the band-aid on, but we don't know how to care for somebody that we're going to care for 10 years or more.
And you're right. Even with all of the kind of care experiences I had and all of the journey in the jobs and opportunities like that I had that have gotten me to this point, I had moved across the country from Chicago to Denver, and 48 hours later, my dad went into medical crisis, and 6 months later, my mom did. So by January of 2013, I was standing with my sisters going, what the heck? I mean, my parents had done estate planning. They had long-term care insurance. They were going to take care of themselves. And I always assumed that, I mean, I always wanted to help if I could, if they needed it, but I didn't have any clue. We were not in any way, shape, or form prepared for everything to explode at both parents at the same time unexpectedly. And I guess the previous experience, like with the caregiving, with the band-aids on the kids, that surely showed me I had the compassion to help someone. But it didn't, where it really fell apart for us is that my family was very healthy. So we had not been in the medical system at all. I didn't even know what a hospitalist was. Never heard the term. I thought my parents' PCP was going to show up. And then this whole world of care. I mean, my grandparents' age, their family, you just took in your grandparents and you took care of them, and you didn't care whether it was called dementia or
Good
Alzheimer's or
morning,
anything else.
everybody.
So I was really unprepared, really unprepared for it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, there's the answer to how to get prepared for that is big yet small. I mean, if you start now, it can be very small. If you wait until it explodes in your face, then it can be big.
Well, and you've documented this in your fabulous, fabulous book, right? What I'm talking about is also the way I introduced the show today, right? And, what we're talking about here in looking at this is how we go through a most meaningful life, right? And what that journey is like when you talk about somebody that you're so close to, like a father,
Mhm.
right? And, these are sometimes folks that we don't ever expect to be in this scenario. So there's so much to it. But then you took it one step further and you said, yes, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to create videos about this. I'm going to help people with this. And then now this has become one of the most important roles that somebody could play, is to be the expert in the field to help other people. Isn't that, that is totally taking that experience and realizing you're not alone and other people need help.
Right. And to be completely honest, I spent 3 years trying to talk myself out of doing it
Yeah,
because I knew
I
it was
bet.
big. And I knew I had written 2 books before. I knew writing 3 books. Um, they're reference style, so they're really compact with information within the number of pages in a book. I knew that was going to be a lot. My husband had just retired and I was exhausted. But after 3 years, I couldn't walk away from it. You know, my sisters and I, when my parents were in crisis in a medical facility, would stay there and do awake overnights with them. So maybe we'd work a 36-hour, literally a 36-hour shift, and go home and research for another 8. Now, I certainly am not advocating people do that. That it was extreme. But at some point, I also realized that it was like this lab experience had been created, and I was supposed to learn how to do it. And if I had walked away, all of that work would be gone.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I have an unusual skill set coming from systems analysis and design. And my
Right.
sister, I will still tout her as the best Google searcher ever. If I can't find it, she can find it in 30 seconds. And so we were really fortunate. We could find a lot of things that we needed. We could teach ourselves, but I just thought, most people don't have that luxury. They don't have that skill set. So I tried to take everything and make it available in little pieces that people can use at the time they need it.
Yeah. And that's the thing too that you brought forward, not just in the way you help other people, but also in outlining something so important. You know, when people are thrown, and I'm going to say this is my words, are thrown into a situation like this,
Mm-hmm.
there's not an organized way to even know where to start. But you have outlined an approach, and this is the work you do to help that you do to help others. A systematic, detail-oriented way, right? To
Right.
maybe document everything, and this is the key for things. So when we come back from break, I want to talk with you about not just how you did that, but what did you find are the critical success factors for successful caregiving? Because you and I talked about this before. Folks don't even know what they don't know,
Right.
and they don't even know what questions to ask. I mean, I'm going in for an elective surgery here, and I'm thinking about, I don't even know what questions to ask. And they've
Mm-hmm.
given me books to read and things to do, and don't take this and don't do that. And if I had to do this on my own, I am not sure that I would be able to get this taken care of. When we come back, what is this about success in caregiving? And how do we honor those that take that journey? Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Trish Laub.
Okay.
Thank you, Benny.
Thanks for the heads up on that question.
I told you I would ask you a question on your journey.
um,
That's another
Ready to come back? Mm-hmm.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back. I mean, I want everybody to meet Trish Laub. And, we're talking about A Most Meaningful Life, which is also her fabulous book, but we're also talking about her journey in her upcoming show. And what we're doing is, look, there are many books that you can read that give you science that are really quite academic. But when you meet somebody that has also walked the path, there's a certain sense that you get from what they can provide and help you with. It's like a mentor said to me once, one of my credible mentors, right? Sedonia Cahill, she said to me, Pat, you can't take a person place you haven't gone. And, that had to do with what happens when you get sick. I'd never really been sick. Your world changes. Trish, before we talk about what people should know that continues to help them with success, how do people find out about you? How did they find out about your show, your books, all of the above?
They can go to my website, trishlaub.com. It's TRISHLAUB as in boy.com. And they can find out about the books, my speaking, consulting, the radio show. There's a separate tab for that. And some of the other things that I do offer.
Look, you have walked the path, right?
Yes.
Right. And when you walk the path, you learn what works and what doesn't. You learn, oh, wait a minute, that looks like a pothole. You know what? Let me help you not step in that. What did you find is on your list of things? What are kind of your top three critical success factors? Meaning, what have you discovered will either help somebody get to that successful caregiving place or not?
I think the first is perspective.
Mm.
And you think, well, what's that got to do with it? It has a lot to do with it. It probably is the number one reason my dad continued to live a meaningful life. He lived with Alzheimer's for probably about 20 years. So perspective, know where your head is in the game. And people can decide that now. I knew I always wanted to be a part of taking care of my parents. But then I also went through an entirely specific process in regard to Alzheimer's. My mom had cancer. So obviously that was different. So perspective, it's 10% what happens to you and 90% how you choose to respond. And there's a big difference between reacting and responding, because responding is a choice. The second thing I think is, I just came up with this one while you were talking. I think it's the ability to creatively solve problems, to look at a situation, and 99% of the world is doing it this way, and it's not working for anybody. So why are we going to do that? Come up with a different way to do it. And it can be something simple like I had a caregiver suggest that we get a baby wipe warmer for the wipes, because the cold wipes made my dad it upset him. Something simple like that, to really big things. My dad had dysphagia, and this isn't all that creative, but at some point I said, you know what, I think we need to retest him. And every medical practitioner said no. And we retested him, and it improved his quality of life significantly because we could back off on thickening things. So I think creative problem solving makes all the difference. And then the other one is to truly know what your philosophy is about care, about life, about someone else's right to live their life their own way, what your goal is. I had a situation where a very, very dear, very close friend called me one day and she said, Tricia, what are you doing? Why are you keeping your dad alive? And I said, I'm not. I don't choose when he leaves, but I do get to impact the quality of his life. So the goal, is it longevity? Is it quality? And then having a strategy. A goal is only a wish if you don't have a plan. So it's having a strategy and knowing that our entire team knew what our philosophy was, and they knew what our goal was, and therefore it made all the decision making easy. So I think those are the top three.
You mentioned a couple of things too that I just think about for myself, and I think about this for others. Part of this journey that you describe, and certainly you talk about in the book, is understanding what is successful, but there are other aspects to that. And I want to ask you about this. We think about, oh, I've got to make sure I have the pills lined up. Oh, I got to make, like those things, right?
Mhm.
Oh, do I have the appointments, right? And I know what Linda went through with her mom, right? 12 years of that, right?
Mhm.
Um, and yet we don't think about this other thing. We don't think about services,
Mhm.
right? We don't think about, well, wait a minute, I'm doing this, but I'm kind of here in my own little bubble. Are there services in the caregiving arena that when you think about them, Trish, you think, oh my goodness, this has got to be on your top 10 list?
Mhm. There's actually two and almost three, depending if you understand the second one. But the first service, I think, if I'm understanding your question, is, and it can be provided by yourself or you can hire someone to do it, is patient advocacy. What I learned going into the medical community, I mean, they're rock stars at what they do. They save
Yeah.
lives. If
Yeah.
you're in the hospital, you're either doing surgery or something like that, or they're saving your life.
Yeah.
And then you have this care world, and there isn't much more than a really limp handshake between the two. And there's actually a time between discharge at a medical facility and going back into a care facility or to your home, where I call it limbo, because nobody's really overseeing things. And even while our parents were in medical facilities, we oversaw their care as so. But patient advocacy is a term, but it's also a job. It's also a service provided by board certified patient advocates. And I highly recommend that people do a little research on that, because it's an invaluable service. The other one, to me, has got to be one of the greatest services offered in our country, and it's palliative care. But most people do not understand what palliative care is. And hospice care is a little tiny, it's at like the handle of the umbrella. There's an umbrella of comfort services that anyone with a life altering diagnosis is eligible for palliative care. And then hospice care, I mean, those people are just angels. I mean, they come and make your life okay, the life of the person who's transitioning as well as yours. So those would be the three top services per se, I would think. I found the most valuable.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of things, and so not only are what we're talking about is important for people to understand, but you also work with people that may have different situations.
Mm.
They may be in a different need. They may have a different aspect of this. And when you're in the middle of something, cutting to the chase of all that is daunting. And that's why, for me, I think about who's going to be on my team, right? If I'm going to get something where I'm not going to be able to get around, who's going to be on my team? Who's going to help me? And that's where you come in. What is it that people should think about and look about when they're making this decision and think, I got this. I can do this alone, Trish.
Uh, well, maybe you can. Maybe you can. My sisters and I, because we didn't have the information, we didn't know what we didn't know. And as you said, there were many books out there. Many of them are fabulous, but I didn't have time to find them. I didn't have time to read them. There are organizations, but now after the fact, when I can look back, my sisters and I became all the players. It's like a football team.
Yeah.
You need a coach, you need a quarterback, and you need a whole lot of players, or at least be aware of them. Maybe your particular situation doesn't need everybody, but a patient advocate can be a person on that team. So when I mentioned the three top things, I'd say, the care team is probably right up there with the three, but that made it four. uh, to have an actual care team, and it's something that I think people need to consider up front. So okay, right now they're just helping with bills and they're taking food over sometimes and maybe cleaning. Okay, that's great. And maybe you have maybe you pay somebody to do some of that. They're part of your team. But look down the road a little bit to be aware. It's always kind of it's good to be aware of that next level that you might need, just to even know about a patient advocate or a placement consultant for housing. That's another person that I'm not even sure they existed when I was going through it. It's a phenomenal service. But your medical professionals are on your team. Any caregivers are on your team. It To me, it's a team effort. Your team may be just you.
Yeah.
It may expand. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to be really clear. my approach is not to say it needs to be done A, B, C, D, E, because there's absolutely not two caregiving situations that are the same. There's different financial factors, different housing factors. And so my approach is to say, these are the things you need to consider. If these 5 of 10 don't apply to you, then look at the other 5. But these are the kinds of things that you might want to be thinking about.
Yeah. And that's where it gets confusing for people, because even the best of us at the best times of our lives, in the best situations, we can be moderately good at decision making. But when you take scenarios like this and you apply stress, then you apply compassion, then you apply the emotional aspect of this, you need help with the guiding system, the guidance system around this. Not only that's what you do, but also in your show, A Cup of Comfort, that is about this. This is about care hero topics that nobody wants to talk about. And I just want to say to folks before we go to break, that is the second and fourth Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio. When we come back, we're going to think about what are those things in the journey that really do scare us. What are some of the things we just don't want to face? What are some of the things that put us in the flight mode, and why is it these things are some of the most important aspects of this journey? That's what Trish Laub's going to talk about when we come back. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready to come back? Sorry to interrupt. Here we go.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I am so thrilled to be talking with all of you about, first of all, about something that this is what Trish Laub does. These are topics nobody really wants to talk about, and yet we're all faced with them. I can't tell you how many people in my circle of friends are right now going through things they never expected to go through and going through it in times that are so absolutely daunting. We're going to talk about how to take the fear and negativity out of what? Yeah, that thing, that end of life planning. But before we do that, how do people get copies of your book? And again, how do they find out about your radio show, past episodes, all of the above?
They can go to trishlaub.com. That's TRISHLAUB as in boy.com. And you can find out everything about the books. You can purchase books there, everything about the radio show. So it's all in one place, easy to find.
Thank you. Okay, this idea, this end of life planning, I think, when I think about the whole concept, the psychology of flight or fight, this is one of these things where flight seems to be the action of choice. It's like, what did you just say? I'm gone. How do you help people take the fear, the stigma, and the negativity out of this? How did you all do it?
Well, fortunately, my parents had their estate planning, their powers of attorney, their personal representatives, their advanced directives in place. We had talked about DNRs, but they had made their own choices. And so if we caught a break anywhere, it was there. The other thing I just have to say, the other place we really caught a break is that there was a moment in time a couple years before, 4 years before I moved here, where I looked at my mom and I said, you and dad need to be in a one-story place by spring. And they did it. So not waiting too long to move. I just had to throw that in there, but because it's really important. So we knew what my parents' wishes were, but what that did for us is it made me realize what a gift that was. I could stand someplace in a hospital room with one of them unconscious and I knew what they wanted. That was not my responsibility. My responsibility was to see that that was executed. And so what I talk about, well, first of all, in talking, when people start to, the topic of estate planning comes up, and I use that as the generic term for all medical directives and everything. It's just a nicer term.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is it strikes, like you said, fear and negativity. It makes people face their mortality, and it's scary. And what I hope to help them with is to help them understand that it's powerful to do your estate planning. You are in control of your life. You are stating what your wishes are. But then you're also giving this amazing gift to the people who provide care for you. And if that's the same as family, that's great. And if it's not, you are also giving the peace of mind to family that they don't have to come up with the decisions. They don't have to make the choices. It's very, very powerful and freeing to do that for yourself. You're taking the power for yourself and you're freeing everybody else from those choices and decisions. So I think it's a gigantic gift.
Yeah. And, this is one of the things that you're right. We don't want to think about, right? But there's one thing that I've heard more people say than not are, I wish I would have. I wish mom would have. I wish dad would have. I wish my brothers and sisters would have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, how often do we hear that? Do people say them in regrets? A little bit, right? Um, but for the most part, it's, if we would have only done this, this would have changed. Let's talk about that. Is it
Definitely.
different for people where we're talking about Alzheimer's or something else?
Well, I think first of all, just to address your
Yeah.
most of what you said, I've been asked, how do you go through this process without regrets? And I think that answer is you make the best choice in the moment that you can with the information
Mm,
that you have.
mhm.
I literally would drive 3 minutes to the hospital, walk in, and some doctor would look at me and ask me a life and death question. I hadn't even heard the question before. So you do the best you can. And what's freeing about that is if 5 minutes later you have better information, you use that and make a different choice. And so it's all about being able to say, I did my best for this person. I did my best with the situation I had. With Alzheimer's, I don't know that or people with dementia, I don't know that it's different. To me, it was actually, it was the same, because I did my best to keep my dad safe, because he was the big protector. He was the big man, and no one was going to hurt his kids or his wife. And he was the protector. And now I had to be his protector. And I made him a promise. I verbalized it to him, and I said, I will keep you safe.
Yeah.
So, I think with dementia, there's an element of safety that ups the ante a little bit. And then also because they can't advocate for their own dignity and the quality of life. That was something that I took on and said, okay, this is going to be part of my deliverable. So, with my mom, I didn't really have to fight to keep her safe, because my dad had cognitive challenge. My mom couldn't have been brighter, smarter, sharper at 92. I mean, my joke is always geez, I wish I would be that bright someday,
Right.
But hers was physical. She had just a myriad of physical issues. So it was very, very different. And she could speak for herself. And that's kind of, if you don't mind, I want to just kind of throw this in too. It was an interesting thing that we found that we automatically did. To me, the dignity and respect piece is huge. And that's what I'm just going to say it. That's what our country has kind of lost sight on, I think, in taking care of our elders. And so my mom could be laying in the hospital looking at me, feeling very, very sick. And the doctors would walk in and talk to me, and I'd say, your patient's right over there. And then they would ask her a question. I would look at her and I would wait. And then I would say, do you want me to answer? So it was all about giving and keeping the power with the person that owned the power. I know that was a little tangent there. Sorry, but I think it's important.
But what you just said is so important, because sometimes we get so stuck in the details or the steps or the actions, we forget about the people.
And if that happens, you significantly lose quality. We're just checking. Yes, those meds are important. Yes, keeping my parents. I mean, we had a short list. We had an objective. We had daily objectives. They had to be kept clean. The meds had to be on time. But beyond that, there had to be quality time. There had to be quality life in between those medications.
Yeah. And this is really the key. As we're caught up in the day to day, and it is a very active and very focused role that you play when you step in and you say, I am going to be this person, that you're so focused sometimes you can forget that you're actually caring for a human being, right?
Right. And it's an interesting process for me, because I realized more so with my dad than my mom, but because he was the one that had Alzheimer's. I watched like all of the daily junk that we think is so important, all the running here, running there, all of those kinds of things. I watched that all slip off of my dad like it was Teflon. And all that mattered to him was connection. That's all that mattered. It was everything to him.
Yeah.
And I would have people say to me, well, how do you connect to somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's? It took me a hot 5 seconds to connect with my dad every time I saw him. So, he was in there, maybe it took a little more time. I had a ritual outside the door of their condo. And then I had a ritual when I came in, and my mom knew what she would watch me do it. And then I would go, because I would always address my dad first. My mom learned I wasn't being disrespectful to her. He needed the immediate lock-in, and then I could go see my mom.
Yeah. This is so important. And, this is why I said earlier, Trish, that when you're thinking that I got this, I can handle it, I can do it, these are the pieces where you don't see yourself. You don't see yourself. And experiences like you're describing and what you went through, they will change people. And I think the one thing that most people don't want to happen is this piece where they forget how to be compassionate, how to care, and how to connect.
Mhm.
And that's where, for me, when you decide to take this journey alone, I always tell people rethink it,
Yeah.
because you're taking a journey you've never been before. You don't know what's going to come up. You don't know how you're going to have to overextend yourself emotionally and physically. And boy, wouldn't you want to get some relief? When we come back, we're going to be talking with Trish about something very important: comfort in their journey, how to bring this to care heroes, what that means. How does it differ from other things you've heard before? The term care hero is different than what you've heard before. That's what Trish Laub talks about. Let's take a short break, everybody. We'll be right back.
All clear? Ready when you are.
Hey, everybody, welcome. It's so great to have all of you, the best listeners on the planet, A Most Meaningful Life with Trish Laub. But before we go into this next conversation, the conversation about comfort in their journey, comfort in their journey, and then care hero. That is something Trish Laub has created. This is the work she does. This is what she writes about. This is the show she does. This is how you honor these folks that step into a position that they're not always sure about what it is or how to do it, but they step up and they step in. And in order to find out more about Trish, again, let's make sure, Trish, people know how to work with you. How do they maneuver through that in, through your website? Just give folks some information if you would.
Sure. The website is Trish Laub. Last name is laub.com. B as in boy. You can find out about the book series. It's A Most Meaningful Life, My Dad and Alzheimer's. There's a book completely dedicated to caregiving, everything you need to know about caregiving. It's Through the Rabbit Hole, Navigating the Maze of Care. And then the third one is Peaceful Endings, and that is Guiding the Walk to the End of Life and Beyond. And then you can find information about presentations and speaking that I do, consulting services. I have a membership side to my website where all of the text of my books, every article, and the content of interviews is on there, plus other features. But all of that information is searchable. So you can put in one keyword and find out any reference to that. And then, of course, A Cup of Comfort, the radio show.
Yeah.
There's a tab on that will show upcoming episodes, podcasts from previous episodes, and everything you would want to know about it.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the why to this.
Mhm.
And the why really has been talked about throughout here and of certainly in your work. But it is a why, and the why has to do with these folks that step forward in a role. And a lot of them won't even say, yeah, I'm a caregiver. They say something like, I'm just doing what I need to do. Of
Mhm.
course I would do it. Um, let's talk about, what does comfort in their journey? What does that say about these folks and your role in advocacy?
Well, comfort in the journey is overarching all of the services and options, but A Cup of Comfort is really pretty specific in its deliverable. It is really, it's a half-hour radio show that I wanted it to be a brief period of time. Caregivers don't have time. They don't have time to find the next thing they need or to eat or to sometimes run to the bathroom. But hopefully they've got 15, 20, 30 minutes if they can get in there and just grab something that they enjoy drinking, a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, something, I don't know, a glass of wine, whatever. And just listen and hopefully walk away. My goal is for them to walk away with a nugget, something that is actionable. But the other part of it is I want it to be a celebration of care heroes, people who provide care. And that starts with dropping a meal off at a friend's house, or taking a meal to someone who's housebound, or picking up, dry cleaning for a neighbor. It starts out as activities of independent living. Very often it moves into activities of daily living, which are ADLs, and those are things like mobility, and they require more assistance with eating. It becomes a bigger job. But each and every one of us steps into that, and it's unknown. We don't know what we're getting into. We don't know if it's going to grow, if it's temporary, if it's long term. I certainly didn't know how long my journey was going to be. And so each of those people stepped into, even if they think it was a responsibility, they chose to respond to their ability. They didn't have to do that, and they did. And they walked into an unknown. And so that should be celebrated. Yes, we are providing caregiving, but that really sounds one-sided to me. And it is not a one-sided trip. So I have heard care partners, and that kind of takes us up a notch. But I think we're care heroes. I know we're care heroes. And that deserves to be celebrated. And then hopefully I can just hand them a little nugget. And then after each episode, they can go on my website and do a downloadable PDF, because I know it's really, really tough to retain information when you're providing care for someone else.
And this really too is, it gets back to how we started this, and certainly it honors your journey. It honors, what you have been able to experience through this, and then make a personal commitment, Trish, that you are not just going to share this, but you are going to help others.
Mhm.
because this is a scenario that folks will face, most likely face in their lives,
Mhm.
and don't really anticipate the wide range of things they really are going to be responsible for. Everything from a power of attorney to the power of enacting it, all of the above. So I want to thank you. And again, of course, people can call you, they can contact you, and they don't always need to know. So I want to say this one last thing. They do not always need to know what they're going to ask you. And I think that's why people don't call, because
Right.
they're like, oh, I'm not going to have really an intelligent question. No, how do people do that? How did they get to work with you? How can you help them on this journey?
They're on the website, trishlaub.com. There are a variety of contact forms, and you don't even have to use the correct form on the, you can use any of them. It'll get to me. But just, write me your story. If you don't have a question, just tell me a little bit about what your situation is, and maybe that you just feel like you don't know where to go from there. Um, Share a tip with me. Caregivers are the best resources for what works and what doesn't work. Um, like I say, on my website, there's a contact page, but on almost every other page, there's a contact form you can fill out. You can email me at info@trishlaub.com. You can call me at the phone numbers at the bottom of the website. Any any way you can find me on social media and message me there.
Yeah. Last question. I love to know your personal message. What would you like to leave us with today?
Wow. Um, I guess my personal message is that caregiving is an honor. It is a privilege. Taking someone through to the end of life, our culture has a lot of fear around that, and I found that it is second only to birth in intimacy to another soul. And I encourage people to step into it, just heart open, and know that you're going to be okay. If you don't have an answer and I don't have an answer, I can find you someone who does. Just know that there isn't one roadmap, and I'm one of many people out there that can help you.
I love it. Thank you so much, Trish Laub, everybody. So much information and dedication, conviction, and strength of who she is, what she does to help all of us, and the conviction of her advocacy. Trish Laub, everybody, I'm Dr. Pat. And I want to make sure when you go to her website, let me just say this. When you go to trishlaub.com, there's not just information here, there's Care Hero Radio. There's information. You might be thinking to yourself, well, I'm a business. Yes. There's information about businesses. How do we come in and educate people? There's information about who she is, her newsletter, her books are here, her speakings here. So clearly, what I want to say to all of you that comfort in their journey, this is something that steps forward and brings this conversation to a new level. And as she would say to all of you, and what we've said today, it's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you're in the middle of a COVID crisis and you find yourself today caring for or being with or being responsible for something that you didn't think you would have to be responsible for. And I want to say this to everybody. Once upon a time, this was a conversation for people that were a bit older, taking care of older people. That is not the world we're living in today. We're in a different world. And I would encourage everyone listening to this show, whether you are 20 or 100, it doesn't matter. This is not a journey that you have to take alone.